Today, we're looking back at the 2020 Rolex 24 at Daytona. This is Triple Crown Racing. Let's get into it. So, the Rolex 24. It's over. After all the test sessions, support races, and team and driver announcements, it's finally come to an end. So after all that, I'm going to be looking at some of the major things that happened in the race and also see how my predictions that were made in the Daytona 24-hour pre-race video that I made held up after the checkered flag flew. So let's start with DPI. Prior to the race, I said it would be one of the Mazdas that would take victory, and if it wasn't them, it would either be it would either be Wayne Taylor Racing with the number 10 car or one of the two Acura Team Penske cars. It looked like Mazda had it in the bag for quite a lot of the race, with the 77 car leading vast portions of the event. Wayne Taylor Racing actually looked like they were out for the count when they got a stop in 60 for running a red light in the pit lane, and it actually caused them to go a lap down and get overtaken by the number 5 Mustang sampling car, which was in the hands of JDC Miller Motorsport. By some miracle, they managed to get themselves back into the lead of the race. I am just as surprised as you are. I have absolutely no idea how they did it. I suppose it's a testament to how good the Wayne Taylor team actually is. Penske, they weren't really in the mix for the race, as the number 7 car got punted off the road by the number 55 Mazda, of course the sister car to the 77, and that incident happened in the bus stop when the 55 dive bombed the number 7. It was a bit of a iffy move, even if you look at it in a positive light. And the number 6 car finished 5 laps down from the DPI lead. At the end of the day, it was the number 10 car that turned a lap deficit into a lead of more than a minute over the 77 car. As good as the 77 was, and as good as Mazda was, obviously they made some massive progress with their prototype, and it actually is the fastest prototype, the fastest DPI in the field, but it just wasn't able to stack up to the number 10. And I think it's difficult for almost anyone to stand up to Wayne Taylor when they're at their best. They're fantastic at Daytona, and as such, they've won the race 4 times. 3 of those were in the last 4 years. The competition was still awesome, and it shows that it's probably the best top flight prototype racing category in the world right now. Moving on to LMP2. Now, the competition in IMSA is generally amazing. This is the case in 3 of the 4 classes right now. LMP2 is where IMSA kind of falls down, and it's a problem that they created themselves. There are, of course, only 5 entries into P2 for this year, and of course, they were originally supposed to be 7. That was whittled down to 5. And, of course, there were clearly some entries that were better than others. I actually picked the winner for this one correctly, and it was Dragon Speed, and that was of course, the car that I guess was going to win. They're a very experienced team, and they had a fantastic driver roster as well. They were clearly the best of the P2 cars, but it wasn't actually one of their drivers that impressed me the most. Ben Keating rocketed away from the rest of the LMP2 field and was almost challenging the DPI cars at the start of the race with PR1 Matthias and Motorsport. He was teammates with and going up against some people that drive these prototypes, so specifically LMP2 cars, and even more specifically the Oreca 07. And he was driving against people who drive these all the time, and he's a gentleman driver. You know, he owns a business, and you know, he do the occasional race, and sometimes you'll see him in AM classes in various series. And some of these professional racing drivers, they were struggling to keep pace with them. He was also driving 2 cars in 2 different classes, so the fact that he was that versatile and able to do so well in 2 completely different cars was really, really impressive. However, it wasn't PR1 that would win the class, as Dragon Speed came out on top. Unfortunately, it wasn't particularly competitive in LMP2 as a whole. The second place car was 2 laps behind the leader, the third place car was 9 laps behind second, and 11 laps off the lead. The reason? IMSA splitting the DPI and LMP2 cars. In 2018, a year before the split, there were 10 LMP2 cars in the prototype class. You had JDC Miller Motorsport, Jackie Chan, United Autosport, Core Autosport, all these amazing teams coming to the race because they could actually win overall. As soon as the cars were split, there wasn't any incentives for these great teams to come anymore because they couldn't actually win the race anymore. Yes, considering the news that broke before the race, being the fact that the next generation of IMSA prototypes could compete against the hypercars, it was probably a long-term move. But why do that more than 4 years before the beginning of the competitive life of LMDH, or whatever they're calling it this week? So what happens is, maybe one good team from Europe, yes, I know Dragon Speed is American, but most of their racing is done in Europe, and none of the other they come over, and then none of the other American teams can hold their own. For some reason, the American P2 teams just don't seem to be as good at the moment as the European ones for some reason. In short, the reason P2 sucked this year is because IMSA shot themselves in the foot a year ago when the factory teams got scared. Let's move on to a better class, GT Le Mans. The story of the race was Porsche versus BMW, and it produced some 50s and 60s British touring car style racing. Prior to the event, I predicted it would be Porsche's race, with one of the two cars winning, so either the 911 or the 912. The main battle was between the 912 Porsche and the 24 BMW. What we kept seeing was the BMW pulling away from the Porsche on the banking, but the Porsche retaliating by making leaps and bounds in the road course section, and it produced some very, very interesting on-track action. However, it seemed that the BMW was just a little bit better on strategy, probably more so on fuel than on tires, because I think what we saw was the BMW just going further into their stints than the Porsches were. And, well, the Porsche pit at quite a late stage in the race, I think. However, so that's what we saw. The competition was between Porsche and BMW. However, Corvette and Risi Competizione, who they were running the Ferrari, obviously, struggled throughout the race with the Corvettes running into their own problems, and the Risi car just not having any real pace for most of the race. Risi Competizione got BOP'd pretty hard. They were actually half a second off the pace of most of the other GTLM cars, and were slower on the straights sometimes than GTD cars, so that kind of sucked. Sometimes IMSA gets the BOP a bit wrong. The Corvettes were promising at times, so I think come Petit Le Mans at the end of the year, I'd expect these cars to really be in the mix by then, as Corvette will have time to develop them. I can't really ever fault the GTE/GTLM formula, other than the occasional BOP mess up, as it always produces excellent racing. It showed that even with Ford gone and out of the picture, it's incredibly awesome. Well done, GT Le Mans. Probably the best class in any endurance series right now. Moving on to our final class, GTD. My guess before the race for the win was the number 9 Pfaff Motorsport Porsche, and that prediction looked like it was going to come true with the car actually leading occasionally, but unfortunately Pfaff ran into problems. What ensued was a battle between Paul Miller Racing and GRT Magnus Racing with their two Lamborghinis, and the number 48 Paul Miller car eventually won that scrap and the race. Strangely, not really any of the cars that I said to look out for did well. I didn't say to look out for them because I thought they were going to do well. I said to look out for them because I thought that they had interesting drivers on them. So of course you had Aim Sullivan with Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch driving on their two cars, and also you had the Gear Racing car, which was the all-female team, and you had Aston Martin making their return with two cars. Not really many of the entrants that I said to look out for did that well. The number 12 and the number 14 Aim Sullivan cars finished 12th and 9th respectively in class. Not bad, but not setting the world on fire. The two Astons had an atrocious race, coming last and second last overall, and well, that's because they didn't finish, but they fell out of contention pretty early on, and also the Gear Racing car blew up. So, well, after suffering some kind of issue and then getting dragged back into the pits and then going back out on the track and then blew up again and caught fire. So, yeah, not really a good race for them. It also seems for some reason, and I know that's a weird segue, moving on from the gear car, that Lamborghini are doing well at Daytona because now they've won GTD the last 3 years, I believe. So 2018, 2019, and 2020. 2018 and 19 were won by Grasser, and well, this year was won by Paul Miller. And that's good because they've gone from not winning a single 24-hour race to winning this race 3 times, which is immensely impressive. And they also took a 1-2, which is, again, very impressive. So, in short, Lamborghini's year in GTD. I want to talk about my overall thoughts. The race is proof that the entry list doesn't have to be big to make it a good race. Sure, this one probably wasn't as good as other Rolex 24s, but it certainly wasn't bad. On the whole, sports car racing is in a bit of a transitional phase, so obviously things are a bit precarious. Some of the entry lists for some series are gonna get smaller for the next couple of years, but the plan is for once the hypercar regs and the LMDH regs come in, there'll be more cars on the grid in both the WEC and the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and also in their own respective special events. So the Le Mans 24 Hours, Daytona 24, Sebring, that sort of thing, because obviously they can cross over now. I thoroughly enjoyed this year's edition of the race. Multiple stories throughout the classes, good racing pretty much right through to the end. What more could we have hoped for? Damn, it's hard to make an interesting video for when the races are actually very good and when they're always this good, because the funny thing about the human race is that we really like to complain. Anyway, the race was made that much better for me because of the awesome Xbox party chat that we had going for watching the race. We had a few Oz and Z guys in there, and we had a few other guys in that party chat as well, and we had an absolutely great time. We were all chatting, we were all having a laugh. I'll probably do that again next year, so if you have an Xbox and you want to watch the Rolex 24 with me, come join my party. Gamertag is Gear 3 Gaming. And now the endurance racing party comes down under. It's coming to my doorstep for the Bathurst 12 hour. If I get time, I'll pump out a preview for you. Things are going to be a bit difficult this week because I'm going back to school very shortly. And that's going to do it from me. Leave any of your thoughts in the comments below. Follow the TCR Instagram for all the latest and greatest motorsport news. I'm also trying to be more active on Twitter, so it's @RacingTriple for the TCR Twitter. Or if you just want to follow me personally, I'm @McKenzie_Musing. Link to those in the description too. We need some new blood on the Discord server, so if you aren't already a part of that, link in the description as well. My goal for 2020 is reaching 200 subscribers by the end of the year. Something very special planned if that happens. And that's going to do it from me. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.